So we want to next is to summarize data. So we want to group by certain attributes. So for the purposes of this example, we are going to group by state attribute. So to group by the state attribute, use your left mouse button, click and hold on the column name, in this case state, and we are going to drag it to the left. So you see this vertical bar to the left of the first column, we are going to drag it there. So we want to group it by state. So click on state, press and hold, and then drag it. So now you can see this is a way to rearrange columns. So if I wanted state somewhere here, I could drag it and release it there. Okay, so now we are going to drag the state all the way to the left of that first column. And when I move it into that white bar becomes yellow. So once it becomes yellow, you can let go of your mouse. So it has pulled the state to a parent level table. So we are now grouping by state. And then we need to do some calculation, right? That we want to group by state. So we can add an additional attribute by clicking on the plus sign. So once you pull the state here, you may or may not see a plus sign. So if you don't see a plus sign, just click on this blue bar and you see a plus sign showed up in both tables. Since I don't want, so this table is the child level table. This table is the parent level table. We want to add an attribute in the parent level table. So click on this plus. When I click on the plus, an attribute is created. Now you can rename this attribute. Since I'm going to follow my tutorial, I'm going to rename the attribute as maximum average mental unhealthy days. So they are keeping track of the average number of mental unhealthy days. And we want to see what is the maximum of those days for each state. Or I could have done the average of that, or I could average over all the counties, or I could have done the sum of the mental unhealthy days, etc. So now we are going to do the max. So I'm going to rename this attribute. So to rename the attribute, I could have renamed it right when I added the attribute. Otherwise, click on the attribute, left button click, and rename. And let's call it max average mental unhealthy days. Of course, you could name it shorter. So that's what I have called it. Okay, so what is this going to do? This is going to find the maximum of those values. And so how do I populate this column? So to populate this column, click on the attribute name and you see edit formula. We are going to select that. So we clicked on the attribute name and select edit formula. Now, if I know what the function is, I can type it in directly. But when I'm starting out, I may not know what are the functions. So go to insert function. And you see there are different categories of functions. And let's just explore a couple. In arithmetic functions, you have absolute, ceiling, combinations, log, power, square root, etc. In date time functions, as the name indicates, I can get the date, day of month, hours, seconds, year, etc. So from the date column, I can pull out the year, month, day separately and such. Okay. You have a few others, which we will explore later. So let's come to statistical functions. In statistical functions, you have all of these. You also have max, mean, median, min, standard deviation, standard error, variance, sum, etc. We want the maximum, so select maximum. So let me repeat that again. We clicked on the attribute name. We selected edit formula. We select insert function. We select statistical functions. We selected max, and it has an expression and a filter. The filter will be used when I want this function to be applied only to a subset of the data that satisfies some condition. For the first example, let us not have a filter, so let us remove that. Now for the expression, I could either type in the variable name, or instead, if I select, I have highlighted that whole expression, and if I select insert value, I will be able to select from here so that I don't have to type. So if you go down, there is average number of mental unhealthy days, and we want the maximum of that over each state. So that's what we are selecting. So let me undo that for a minute. I can't undo inside here. Okay. Or I could have just gotten rid of everything and then selected insert value and selected average number of mentally unhealthy days. So now before I click on apply, I wanted you to pay attention to the fact that this variable name has spaces, white blank spaces in between, and therefore the entire thing has to be enclosed with the back quote. The back quote key is on the top left of your keyboard to the left of the number 1 key on the top or above the tab key. So that back quote will tell CODAP that this entire thing is the name of one variable. So let's click apply. And it tells us that in Alabama, over all the counties, the maximum number of average unhealthy days was 6. And so on and so forth. We are unfortunately, the US territories are not included in this data set. So in North Carolina, the maximum was 5.1. In California, the maximum was 5.5. So we added a new column. We renamed it. We selected the edit formula, insert function. The function we needed was in the category called statistical functions. We chose the max function. We were not going to filter this time, so we removed the filter option. And then we inserted the attribute over which we wanted to calculate the maximum.